this video is Mojo approved. Right? Right. Hello and welcome back to our channel. Thank you very much for joining us for another episode of Things They Forgot to Teach You in Business School. I'm your host, Scott Rosen, Advisory Board Member and Managing Director for SRCC and Para GmbH. And today's video answers a question we are quite often approached with. How do you maintain focus when you're up here? And let's face the harsh reality. There's a lot of ways that you can lose control when you're up there. All too often we forget about where we're going, we go astray on a tangent because someone asked us a question, or how often have we missed out on delivering all of our points because we just forget about them? The list goes on and on and on, but it's a problem that plagues many presenters. In our first video, we talked about maintaining flow and control by playing to the audience towards what they see, what they hear, and how you sound. We said that you only need to hit 2 out of 3 to have your presentation be successful. Remember the JFK example? It's with that in mind that we give you our top 10 elements to help you maintain focus. First tip is very simple. Keep the presentation as minimal as necessary. Now, keep in mind, I didn't say as short as possible, just limited to what your time permits. Your audience has a limited attention span, and they'll most likely remember what you said at the start, probably at the end, and a little bit of what you mentioned in the middle. This is especially true if they're looking at their watches because the meeting has already gone well over time. Keep this in mind because we'll talk about this a bit more down the line. Number 2, your presentation has to be easy to remember. Anything that's too complex or complicated has a tendency to be forgotten. This can lead to your audience's eyes glazing over and a panic situation from you. Your audience will respond better when they can recall it later on, and it's especially true when you're going after new clients. If they don't understand what you're saying or what problems you can solve directly, why should they go with you? Third tip, your audience has to understand what you're talking about. We're not saying to dumb it down to the lowest common denominator here, but please keep it simple. Quite often we see entrepreneurs and more technical professionals come to us with presentations that have terms or jargon that are unfamiliar to those not in the field. You risk getting more questions or worse, losing the audience. And when you do this, it instantly causes a loss of focus. Our fourth piece of advice is that your deck should be aesthetically pleasing. This is just a fancy way of saying that your deck should be easy to read and look at. Lots of symmetry, generous margins, and it should be as stress-free for your audience to look upon as possible. Be careful though, because you can easily fall into the pitfall of our next mistake. And that's when you make it too distracting. If you have a rainbow of colors on the palette or spinning images and transitions, it can really cause the audience to lose focus on your primary message. Remember this important point. The focus should be on you as a speaker, and if it's not on you, it should be on your deck, and only because you want them to look there. If it's not on either of those, then you're doing something wrong. Next up, it should be legible. If the font's too small or if a slide has too much information, it can completely overwhelm the audience. Be careful with this because it's better to break it down into smaller chunks for your audience to digest than risk losing them over too much information at once. I think number 7 is probably the most popular reason why people lose focus, and that's because they forgot to make sure that their entire presentation is mistake-free. You know those little red or blue squiggles which appear under a word or sentence in Microsoft Office and PowerPoint? Well, those will completely distract your audience and draw attention away from you. Pretty soon the audience starts focusing on the mistake and they start to say, look at that. That person made a mistake. Wow. Next thing you know, that's all they can talk or think about, and it's something that they begin to search for throughout your entire deck and they're not listening to you. If they see those, they start to think that you're relatively unprofessional, and then they start to think, why am I going to deal with somebody who doesn't take care in fixing these mistakes? If they don't, take enough caution or proof anything, why do I want to deal with that person, or why do I want to become that company's client? Watch out for mistakes. Proof, double check, triple check, always proofread your slides, and when given the opportunity, especially if you're translating into a foreign language, make sure you show it to a pair of native eyes. They can make all the difference when you're presenting in the end. It can literally make or break you. Another popular question we get asked is, how do you deal with the balance between images and text? And as a rule of thumb, if you haven't researched your audience, I can tell you best experience is 70-30. 70% pictures, 30% text. Yes, there's different schools of thoughts on this. There's different methods. There's a little bit of science. If you don't know who you're going to talk to, 70-30 is the best way to go at. And we're going to cover this again in future videos, but the best advice we can give you at this moment in time is that, 70-30. Most execs that we've come across in the C-suite will tell you they want one image, 3 to 5 lines of text, maximum, and less than 12 slides. That's pretty much all the attention span that they have before they're on their next email or they're out the door into the next meeting. So keep it in mind. The 9th tip is relatively straightforward, but a little hard to comprehend. It has to do with your presentation being timed correctly. And this is more along the lines of when you're in a conference, in an all-day conference where you have a certain slot. For example, 9:30 to 10:30. And your slot can come at some point during the day, but it has to do with when one set of presentations goes over and everything starts to get delayed. Now, there are 3 time slots that you have to be very wary of if you're going to maintain focus. The first is right before lunch, because everybody's looking at their watches and they can't wait to get out of there. That means that you have to be a little bit more attentive and kind of shorten your presentation so you can finish on time. Your group will thank you for it. The second thing you have to watch out for is directly when you get back from lunch, because then everybody's in their food comas, in which case you have to be a bit more entertaining so that you're resetting that attention span on the audience quite often. Tell a few more jokes, a few additional stories. If you even need to, I've seen people have everyone in the audience, even in a conference of 25, 30,000 people, stand up, shake it out, and get moving. It gives everybody a chance to kind of reset the clock on that lunch coma setting in. The last place where you have to watch out for actually has to do right before everybody goes home, the last person to go, because then everybody's on free time and you have to be both entertaining and short. So cut your presentation down a little bit. If you can give people time back, I promise that is going to pay you dividends in the long run. Worst case scenario, just email anything that you might have missed, or let them know that they can talk to you directly after the conference, or take your personal details so they can arrange for a more direct meeting afterwards in order to get your remaining points across. But keep in mind for those 3 slots and you'll go far. Rounding out the list is number 10. I think probably my favorite is that you have to be entertaining. Tell a joke, a story, or something that's going to create at least one tether of empathy between you and the audience, and it will pay rewards beyond what you would imagine. A single story, even if it just attracts one person and they stay along with you, at least that's one person that paid attention to something that you had said, and will give you the ability to kind of take things forward. If you're entertaining, people will remember you more, and most likely you'll be invited back. It's definitely my favorite, but just be careful, because we hear a lot of people tell stories or jokes that are a little bit off key and they're not so professional. So just remember to keep it professional. Stay away from those taboo subjects. You know what they are. We'll go into them later. And there you have it. Usually after we talk about these 10 things, the next question we get asked is, how do you keep charisma? How do you generate charisma when you're up there? And the answer to that question is going to actually have to come in another video, but the short answer is this. For the most part, the important things you need to recognize are that you have to, in order for that to happen, you have to reduce the nervousness and the fear that you have when you're up there. You can't be afraid, and you have to let your own personality come out. And that's when, if people start to like you, they start to relate to you, they start to become a little bit more familiar with you, that's when you'll start to see that the respect and the charisma comes. We'll talk more about it in future videos, but for the most part, that's your short 1-minute answer. Maintaining focus takes a little bit of patience and some practice, but these tips should help you avoid some of the major pitfalls we can fall into when we're up there. Try them out at your next presentation and let us know how you improved. Go slow. Don't try to master everything at once. You'll get it. If you have your own idea or a story for how you maintain focus, please feel free to share it in the comments section below. It's always wonderful hearing from you guys, and we'd love to learn more about how you approached and beat this problem. Well, that's it for us today. We hope you enjoyed this episode and learned a few tips for your next presentation. Please feel free to give us a like, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more tips on how to make a better presentation. Check us out on LinkedIn, Zing, and if you have specific questions or ideas, please feel free to let us know by email. Address is in the description below. Good luck with your next presentation. Thank you again for tuning in, and as always, we'll see you next time.